Hello, and welcome back to IVF in Your Pocket, your waiting room companion. I'm your host, Alexandra Gary Stock. I'm a therapist in San Francisco, California. I'm going to get right into it today. We are walking through a failed IVF cycle with C. We walked C through the negative beta results in our last episode. If you haven't checked that out, it's worth a listen. But either way, now we're going to talk about what to do next when your IVF cycle has, quote, failed. And we're going to first start with really the most important step that a lot of people, I think, skip over, which is it's really important to take time to pause and reflect and just grieve. And one of the great things to do is to find some quiet time to do the writing exercise that I talked about in the last episode. But you can do that now if you haven't. You can pause this and find either your phone, or you can do this in your head or a piece of paper and a pen and just write down everything that's coming up around your failed IVF cycle. All the feelings, all the thoughts, all the worries, and most importantly, and probably what will come up naturally, is all the questions. Once you've done that, and you've taken some time to settle into this bad news, it's time to now start the next steps, which is thinking about what your options are or how you're going to proceed. So again, the first step is to pause and to think about, what do you want next? And this is a good time to check in with your partner, if you have one on the journey, about what are they thinking. Now it's time to go back to the writing exercise that you did, or if you did this in your head, and kind of pull out the questions that you have about what happened in your cycle, and then any questions you have about what comes next. And these are good to take back to your care team. So one of the most important tips after a failed IVF cycle, and from this episode, I would say, is to know that you have a right to a follow-up with your care team. You have a right to a follow-up with your care team. So sometimes that isn't talked about or advertised, but after each cycle, successful or not, you do have the right to consult your RE and absolutely should go back and have a dialogue with your care team and or E about what happened and what's next. Even if they have an answer such as these things just happened, there's only, I believe, a 65% chance of success. And they might say something like this is a numbers game and are disappointed along with you. You still have the right to a follow-up and to ask about things you might be thinking about in terms of moving forward, even if you're moving forward and deciding that you're no longer going to be on the IVF journey. And then the other thing that's really important here, a big tip, is just because your care team is recommending something doesn't mean you need to do it if you don't feel right about it or you and your partner don't feel right about it. This is a good time possibly to reach out to another RE for a second opinion and to get their sense on your particular case. This is a time then to sit back and with your partner think about two things: what you feel you want to do next in your gut, and then what makes sense logically. And those two things don't necessarily always align. And then you have to think together with your partner about which decision, which next step makes the most sense. That might mean going with something more logical, or that might mean going with your gut. You really want to get all your options out on the table. You might want to write these down or just think about them on the top of your mind with your partner if you have one. You want to lay out all the options that sound good to both of you in terms of what feels good in your gut, and then logically what makes the most sense. So for example, this might mean that you feel like you want to take a break, but it might make more sense, giving timing, to go forward and try again. So those are the two options that you have in front of you, and then you need to make a judgment call about what feels right for you in this particular moment. It also means that perhaps you feel like going forward, but perhaps it makes some logical sense to do some additional testing. You might not feel, for example, if you are struggling with male infertility and your RE has suggested, let's not do another tessie, let's not go down that route. You might feel in your gut that even though the statistics aren't looking good, it feels right for you and your family to go forward and try something that's not necessarily statistically recommended another time, just for peace of mind. So there's a lot of weighing the options at this stage. And so it's really important after a failed IVF to get all the options on the table, both those that feel right to you, so those from your gut or your heart or what feels right, and then the actual logical ones, so that you can see everything and then go from there. And only you and your partner can really determine what the best next steps are for you, given all the options. That's why it's so important to do the pausing and reflecting before going into your options, so that you can feel as grounded as possible and make the best decision you can with the information you have in this moment. And finally, another really important guide in this phase when determining what's next is to really go back to your priorities and see if they've changed, see if they're the same, and get reconnected to your motivation. And that might have shifted a little, as I've talked about before. And then that's kind of the new priority. If you're feeling like, okay, we have enough embryos, we want to try this again, let's just go for it, go for it. But if you're feeling like, I really want to break, and that feels more important than having, quote, success right now in the IVF journey, then that probably takes priority, given that that has shifted for you. Perhaps you didn't feel like you needed so much of a break when you were first starting out, and now with the loss and all that's the toll that IVF has taken, perhaps it means that right now the priority is just to pause and rest for a bit before moving forward. Now, some people feel like for them, what is the most helpful is just to push through. And that can be a great strategy for some people. My only recommendation would be, if you're using that, you just know what you're doing. You're conscious about the decisions you're making along the path, as conscious as you can be given the stress of this process. And that's why it is important to take some reflection time when your cycle has failed. I hope this has been helpful. Just to recap quickly here, a little summary. You're going to take some time to pause. You're going to look back at your writing exercise and see what came up for you, what kind of questions. And then you're going to take those questions to your care team to get some answers. And then if you have a partner, you and your partner are going to lay all the options out on the table. So you're going to take the options of what's next from your gut, and you're going to take your options, the logical options, or even the recommendations from your RE, and look at them and spread them out and see what resonates the most for you in this particular moment. Thank you so much for listening. That concludes our episode for today. If you have a question about your failed cycle, please reach out to me, alexandrapsychotherapy@gmail.com or alexandragarystock.com. Until next time, you are not alone.